President Biden is in Israel. In fact, he just received the Presidential Medal of Honor from Israeli President Isaac Herzog. And now he is greeting U.S. athletes during the opening of the Maccabiah Games in Jerusalem. Also earlier today, Biden holding a joint press conference here with Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid, where he defended his upcoming visit to Saudi Arabia and also had this to say about the controversial Iran nuclear negotiations.
I continue to believe that diplomacy is the best way to achieve this outcome, and will continue to work with Israel to counter other threats from Iran throughout the region, including support for terrorism, ballistic missile program that continues, and the proliferation of weapons to terrorists and proxies like Hezbollah.
Let's get you out to the ground there and covering the latest on Biden's trip to Israel. We have Chris Mitchell standing by for more details on what's happening today. Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bianca. Well, also earlier this afternoon, President Biden and Acting Prime Minister Yair Lapid delivered remarks to the press, as you saw there, and they signed what's called the Jerusalem Declaration. It's been called the centerpiece of Biden's visit. It's a document affirming the strong bond between the U.S. and the Jewish state. Both of the leaders also addressed the issue of Iran, as you heard there from President Biden. Yair Lapid, the Acting Prime Minister of Israel, said the free world needs to send Iran a message that military force is still on the table. Take a listen.
Words will not stop them, Mr. President. Diplomacy will not stop them. The only thing that will stop Iran is knowing that if they continue to develop their nuclear program, the free world will use force. The only way to stop them is to put a credible military threat on the table.
Well, President Biden also affirmed they won't allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, but they may not agree on how to do that. And obviously, Yair Lapid says a military option has to be on the table. Biden has said diplomacy is the main goal, but use of force only as a last resort. Now, Lapid and most Israeli leaders believe a credible military threat needs to be on that table. And Israel also wants assurances that the U.S. will have its back to make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. Now, after 18 months in office, the Biden administration still has not been able to complete the negotiations to stop Iran's nuclear program. Now, the other major item on the agenda, Bianca, is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And tomorrow, Biden will visit a hospital here in eastern Jerusalem, actually just behind me, but will not allow any Israeli officials to join him. And that's a controversial move for many. And then he goes to Bethlehem to meet Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, and later in the day heads to Saudi Arabia to ask the Desert Kingdom for more oil to lower the price of gas in the U.S. But some wonder how much more Saudi Arabia can produce, or if Biden should also plan a trip to Midland, Texas, and other oil-producing states. Bianca?
Chris Mitchell, obviously, yes, a very high stakes and busy trip for President Biden. Thanks for that live update. And President Biden is defending that trip Chris just mentioned to Saudi Arabia, where he does plan to meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
The reason I'm going to Saudi Arabia, though, is much broader, is to promote U.S. interest. Promote U.S. interest in a way that I think we have an opportunity to reassert what I think we've made a mistake of walking away from, our influence in the Middle East.
But you may remember, November 2019, then presidential candidate Joe Biden had this to say about the Saudis in the wake of journalist Jamal Khashoggi's murder.
And I would make it very clear, we were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia.
To talk more about the visit to Saudi and also Israel, joining us now is former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Len Khodorkovsky. Len, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Bianca.
Let's begin first with Saudi Arabia before we go into Israel, sir. And you know, MBS dodging his calls this year, and you heard him just say they would be a pariah. Just a short time ago, you probably heard that Biden spoke to a reporter and said that the visit to the kingdom is much broader, basically alluding to they won't be bringing up Khashoggi's death. So it does seem like human rights is an issue, except now energy may be more important.
Regarding Saudi Arabia, I think this administration has taken all the wrong decisions on our relationship. Saudi Arabia has been a friend of the United States for a long time. Obviously, we've had our ups and downs, like any relationship. There are a lot of positive developments happening in Saudi Arabia, and the mistake of calling them a pariah state early in the administration and insulting the crown prince and the country has resulted in where we are right now, which is President Biden having to go there to reset things. And frankly, unfortunately, a lot of trust has been eroded between this administration and the Saudis, and it's going to be a very difficult proposition to do.
Yeah, and it's such a contrast, as you know, Len, to former President Trump, greeted with the big sword dance and more of the oil crisis. You know, the Saudis aren't really incentivized to help us, which is a crisis that we made ourselves, obviously. How do you think that will play out? Do you think they'll give a little, or do you think it'll just be some niceties, maybe even not a handshake? That's another thing coming up here. Where does it go in your expertise? Where do you see this playing out?
Well, I think it's in the interest of the Saudi Arabian leadership to maintain solid and strong relations with the United States. It's also in the United States' interest to maintain solid relations with the Saudis. They're an important security partner in the region. They're actually, growing into a very promising partner on various fronts other than security. Certainly the agreement that seems to have been struck in Israel, which allows direct flights between Israel and over Saudi Arabia, is a positive step forward. I hope the Saudis will become the next country to enter the Abraham Accords. Of course, the peace agreements brokered by the Trump administration and the countries in the region. So I think there are a lot of optimistic, positive things that could be accomplished. Resetting that relationships for this administration would be a wise thing to do. And I think in the long run, both the Saudis and the United States should rely on each other as friends, not adversaries.
Yeah, an excellent point there. Really, the Mideast, hinges on this piece here that, the Abraham Accords, as you said, was a huge step forward to. But one thing that's standing in the way, obviously, is the Iran nuclear deal. Let's play a little bit of what Biden said with an Israeli news reporter today.
I think it was a gigantic mistake for the last president to get out of the deal. They're closer to a nuclear weapon now than they were before. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not the Quds Force is going to stop or they're going to continue to be engaged in activities. We can act against them and still have a deal where they curtail their nuclear program.
This is really a deal that no one, Israel doesn't want it. The Saudis have, the Houthis in Yemen. That's an Iran proxy war, Len. We know that. So why do you think this administration is still going forward with this Iranian nuclear deal that, when it was even in existence, there were no inspections of these plants? Why move forward if there's such resistance?
Well, it was a mistake to begin with. All our friends in the region, Israel, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Bahrainis, disagreed with the deal. They didn't want the Obama administration to enter the deal because it did not help secure their countries, and it did not prevent terrorist attacks, missile development, or, it really opened the door to the Iranian regime to actually obtain a nuclear weapon at the end of the deal when all the sunsets have set. So, in fact, the Biden administration reverting to the Obama strategy regarding pivoting toward Iran has ended up in putting the administration into this very difficult, precarious situation regarding their relationships with the Saudis, the Israelis, and everybody else. And I would actually, with respect to President Biden saying it was a mistake because the Iranians have sprinted in their enrichment, I think his memory is very selective. In November of 2020, around the election, the Iranians were enriching at 4.5%. Now they're enriching at 60%. So all of that has been achieved during the year and a half that the Biden administration has reversed the maximum pressure campaign and has been indulging the Iranian government.
Right.
So that's just a fact.
Yeah, it's a fact that apparently someone in the administration, for some reason, is willing to ignore. Great analysis, and we appreciate you being with us today. The former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Len Khodorkovsky. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.